Good morning. Let's sit up tall and take a nice deep breath in and make this sigh. Breathing. Eyes opening. Often when I see, friends or clients who are having a very difficult time, I will say to them that they are the exact person that I was hoping to be able to hang out with. That I wasn't hoping for some ideal person that is not who they are at that moment. This is really about unconditional love. Unconditional love is about the love of your whole life and understanding that you can't compartmentalize part of it and hate just this little part. Every experience in our life are like the pages of a book, The words that are written, the book is you. So even if you don't like what's written, to hate it, you can be strongly against something. So strongly against it that you are willing to give your life to see the end of it. But hating is not a means to let go of what you hate. The question is, are we willing to dedicate our lives to hate? This is a very big question for me. I grew up, I lived in Chicago around the university area, University of Chicago, until I was in third grade. At that point, our family moved into a neighborhood on the far south side of Chicago. And this community at that time, in the early 70s, was predominantly working class Irish. Now, you may be aware of our history in the 70s in places like Boston and Chicago, but people were extremely angry at that time. This was during the period where, black people, African Americans, were moving into some of these neighborhoods, and they made the decision that they were going to make a stand, or at least a lot of those people made a decision that they were going to make a stand to try to keep us out. So I was in third grade, and so it was very interesting because the University of Chicago area is a melting pot, and it's very open in a way. And when I moved into the Irish community, or this Irish American community, it was like a steel door had been slammed shut. Now, as I was walking to school or being out, I was being approached by people on a regular basis. Sometimes adults, sometimes like doing things like spitting at me, or I would have people throw dog feces at me. I would often have to take alternate routes home. I was, extremely afraid. When I went to that school that I went to, there was only one other African American, a young girl in the school. So it was the two of us. I was the only African American boy, and she was the only African American young woman. So the amount of intense bullying and humiliation and making fun, even my friends would make cruel racial jokes. And when I say my friends, this really was an amazing thing, because as I got older, this harassment began to change. It became, even scarier in a way, because I would be accosted by people, and like two different types of people. One person might seriously want to hurt me, and another person might seriously want to humiliate me and belittle me, but not wanting to physically harm me. But the point is that both of these types of groups were not discernible as to which. The one who might try to humiliate me also might be the one who, the one who would humiliate me. So this is very difficult for me. So I went on, and it was very challenging, and I had a lot of tough times. Eventually, I went to multiracial high school, and there were elements there that were also challenging. But I went to college, and when I got to college, the first semester of college, I was accused of stealing. And I was only African American on my floor, and my next door neighbor had transferred at the semester. But I was called in by I guess it was the dean or whatever it was, the administration in terms of keeping structure in the school or whatever. And they told me that this person who had left had said that they had come into their room, and I was in their room with their wallet in my hand, taking money out when they came in. This was not true. I had never done anything like this. There was a issue around the floor. A lot of money had been stolen that first semester. So when they brought me in, they said that they knew it was me, and they grilled me for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they told me that if I would admit to stealing, I would not be in trouble. If I did not admit it, I was going to be expelled, and they were going to pursue legal action. Now, I'd had a very challenging relationship with elements in my family growing up. I was very afraid of, and so when this happened, I just felt really, really. I was devastated. I began to cry, and they told me they thought I was mentally ill because I wouldn't admit to stealing. But I said I will not do that. I will not admit to this because I did not do this. So I'm sharing this with you, because I'm being open with you about something today. I'm being open with you about a chronic pain that I experience, and for years, please bear with me for just a moment. Thank you. For years. Afterwards, I knew that I was terrified and often terrified, but it made sense to me, especially in the time when I was coming up in Chicago. But even elsewhere, there was often a real sense of threat. And because I was a large young man, when they would come to me, they would come with really profound force. So sometimes I would be surrounded by people with baseball bats, or gradually myself and other friends, other African American friends, as more people moved into that neighborhood, it seemed to almost intensify. You might be standing there in a car would jump out. It might be just me by myself or with friends, and all of a sudden I'd be surrounded by guys with baseball bats. I had a guy throw an M80, at me. It blew up. So loud, blew up right in front of me. If it had been any closer, it could have blown off my whole face. One day, when I was in 7th grade, my best friend came around the corner and he was telling racial jokes about me. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand what this all means for me. For years afterwards, I began to have really profound panic attacks. I would become terrified out of nowhere. I might be in a movie theater, and all of a sudden, I would become terrified for no apparent reason. I might be with my girlfriend, at night. I'd wake up and become terrified. I'd have to leave where I was. If it was a movie theater, I'd have to leave right then. And I began to become absolutely terrified of being afraid. If I had a slight element of fear, it was like a god to me. When I was afraid, it was like, So, I really, it was interesting for me because, again, and I want to encourage you to see this as well, I began to open myself up. I was really searching. I was really, really, really searching. I had no mentorship. No one seemed to like me for the most part. Again, I had some friends later, but. So I'm telling you this in celebration. I'm celebrating my life, and I'm celebrating our lives. It doesn't mean, when I say celebration, it doesn't mean that I'm celebrating the specific elements. I'm sorry. But I want to share this with you. Why I do this. So I developed a commitment that I wanted to be as committed to grounding as these people were committed to hurting. Not just racial, other things too. But gradually, slowly, I realized the benevolence of life. I realized that life was worth celebrating and was worth celebrating, and the actual experience itself is a celebration. Living is a celebration. And so I began to become determined to wake up, because I realized that we create the world that we focus on. So as a child, they used to tell me about race wars all the time. So I had a fear that one day the whole world would be like my neighborhood. And in a way, this is my experience. Now, I'm just being open with you now. I'm not hiding this emotion. Now, this is present for me all the time. That's why I do what I do. Because if I didn't do what I do, I wouldn't be able to make it. I'm dedicated to being awake and helping others to be awake. I'm dedicated to helping others to learn how to serve, to learn how to not to suffer, as well as myself. I'm dedicated to feeling like I'm worthy to be loved by anyone. I'm dedicated, and I will never stop. And that's why I do what I do. And so this is how this situation has affected me. So because I do so much practice, I don't have to let this out. I would be able to, and it's not a faking when I'm shining this joy. It is real. It is who I am. But it's who I am because I have to balance this long-term chronic pain. And I have learned to. And I have learned not to be terrified. And I have learned to forgive. And I've learned that this life is happening for me and not to me, even now. And so I am open to the edge, and this is my edge. I'm open to my edge. For years later, I would wake up screaming on a regular basis. Sometimes I would wake up and I'd be sprinting in pitch dark. I'd wake up like in the living room or something, like hiding in a corner. I want to tell you that if you throw a rock in a molten fire, if you don't think that rock will absorb the heat, you're not being honest with yourself. If you think an irrational person understands their level of being irrational, that means you're irrational. So I want to suggest that we all need to wake up, and we all need to wake up to the fact that this life is a gift. This life is a gift, even as it is. And it's the opportunity to truly learn why compassion is so deeply important. And not just to people who we feel good about. So if you've followed this in the past, you've often heard me say that my values are kindness, joy, compassion, and positive indifference. And those became my values because I was at such a deficit of those things. But I am so determined, and I will not back down. I am going to continue to shine into the world to help people come to peace with themselves and with each other. We cannot find a healing in the outer world if we don't find wholeness in the inner world. So I've been so unbelievably blessed because when I intended it, all of a sudden, resources just came out of nowhere. One of them was Bob Marley. who I also consider to be a teacher. So for years, I've always been very gregarious, but I would also have extreme social anxieties. And so for people to know who I was, I would become concerned. And so this right here, what I'm doing, is really huge to me, because this is a real statement of courage. Courage is not about not being afraid. Courage is realizing that you have a desire that's more powerful than your fear. So access your courage and come into compassion, come into harmony. We have to intend courage. We have to intend acceptance. And we have to be able to find a way to heal. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure about that one. I do know it's possible. What I'm saying is that we are a rolling miracle. And the Course in Miracles suggests that there is no hierarchy of miracles. A small miracle is just as miraculous as a big miracle. An ant is just as unlikely to exist as the sun. So we have to find a way to heal these wounds. We have to find a way to heal these wounds. And we have to find a way to honor. You know what? When I saw that video, it blew me away. I couldn't even watch it at first. It actually took me until yesterday so I could watch the video, because it was just too powerful for me. And when I watched it and I sat with it, and I was just feeling such a unbelievable empathy for this gentleman, and to hear about his kindness in the world. I'm not saying the man didn't make mistakes, we all do. And when I see the way people have been, so, what I do is I work to create a nonlinear de-escalation. And what I'm intending is I'm sending a de-escalation in the whole world as far as I can shine. And I'm not limiting that. As far as it goes, and it doesn't matter to me how far it goes. The Buddha, saying that we are each the Buddha doesn't mean that you're aggrandizing. It means that you realize how powerful you are. So I would really like to ask you to shed light into the world. Remember, it's about synthesis. It's about applying the lessons that you have been taught. It's about being honest with yourself when you are stepping into biased manipulation. But it's also understanding, as in Buddhism, the elements of the person who does these horrific acts, it began before them. And they were conditioned. I'm not saying they don't have responsibility, but if we don't understand this part, we're missing it. I remember doing so many things that I was ashamed of, but I was acting out. So, this is equanimity. This is equanimity. This is tranquility. Equanimity is positive indifference. Tranquility is owning the authorship of your life. So I'm asking you today to step up. Don't be so charged that you look through the world through lenses of hate. Yes, these people need to be held responsible. But hatred, as John F. Kennedy, he had the quote that has something to the effect that if you ride a tiger, don't be surprised if you end up inside one. If you decide to give yourself to hatred, and really, hatred is really a response to giving yourself to fear, then the world that we are creating is going to be a hell state. However, we can shift this. We can intend it. We can step up. And I promise you I will. Now, I am asking for your support. Because when you are part of the Sangha, there's three elements that we need to develop. The Sangha, which is the spiritual community, practice and study. And we have to do it today. Understand the urgency of this. It is urgent that you begin to enjoy your life. Joy is not happiness. Joy is being on point and committed. So, I know I went way over today, but I just want to share, and this is actually a gift to you. This is not something I needed to do, because this is my internal experience. I know that I'm big enough to have something happen I really am horrified by, but I'm spacious enough to realize that I can still feel the sun. So I'm going to ring the bell. Here we go. I can't remember what song it is offhand, but in one of Bob Marley's songs, he has a line, "Don't let the system make you kill your brother man. No, dread, no." Don't let the system make you kill your brother. I bring my hands into prayer position, and I bow to you. And I bow to this gentleman who passed. Namaste.